Baldur's Gate 3 is full of challenging encounters, memorable bosses, and race against time survival situations, all of which require you to do something during combat. But what if you couldn't do anything? Can you beat Baldur's Gate 3 while doing absolutely nothing? Beginning on the Nauteloid with my halfling Stan, I'll go over the rules during this first encounter. Whenever the commence battle text appears, everyone I control that's in combat can no longer move, attack, use items, heal, or use anything found in the spellbook. Obviously, doing nothing is not some brilliant new undiscovered strategy, so after 11 turns we're met with the first of what will no doubt be many game overs. Saving the world while doing nothing is gonna take some out of the box thinking. Starting over fresh, those imps must be avoided. I attempted to jump over the wall by casting Enhanced Sleep and mashing jump into this hidden area of the screen, then spent the next 10 minutes questioning how I'm failing to pull off a literal 2-button combo until suddenly I popped on through. This solves the first half of the Nauteloid, but stepping through this door triggers immediate combat, with the transponder being much too far away to be interacted with. There is a strange mechanic with Mage Hand that can solve this problem. However, the game blocks you from being able to cast Mage Hand until after your first battle. Essentially, this is the end of a solo do-nothing run. But by launching a second window of BG3, I can play with myself, create a second short king, then spawn into the world already here. Characters joining late don't have any spell restrictions, thus Mage Hand is achieved. It's now up to this little guy to fly over the door and trigger the cutscene. For reasons beyond my understanding, when combat starts this way on the Nauteloid, the Mage Hand's owner is teleported right next to the transponder. Without taking a step in combat, the Nauteloid is complete. I know lore-wise that whole sequence makes no sense, but if that bothers you, later on in the video you're gonna have an aneurysm. You've been warned. Act 1 of this challenge is by far the easiest part. Many people here will ask you to do things, but telling all of them that their problems don't matter is a completely viable strategy. The one companion I picked up was Gale, then together we jumped 100 feet up a cliff to sidestep the only battle the act tries to force upon someone. I talked with a few creatures for XP, making sure no one gets hurt by my words. And as far as key items go, I grabbed a snack for Gale, the iron flask from the cave, and explosives from everywhere I could think of. There's no real plan as to how I'm going to use these items right now, it's just always good to be prepared. Before leaving the region, I figured I'd hit up the Grove for a little shopping trip, and was shocked to see Zevlor lost his battle against the goblins. I've easily watched that encounter play out over 100 times in the past, and not once have I seen that happen firsthand. There are still ways around it, thankfully, so it was more of a surprise and a like, oh, that's interesting way than any real worry. I sold my junk to the highest bidder, walked inside and briefly considered if I should save Arabella, but the do nothing option was right there. I gotta stay in character. To the people of this world I've done nothing of note, but already found myself ready to leave them all behind for good. I led the party of slackers through the mountain pass into the Shadow Curse lands to begin Act 2. The Shadow Curse in this day and age is hardly an obstacle for a seasoned player like myself. Just asking my Drider friend to kindly hand over the Moon Lantern always works. I freed the Pixie for the bell, and Last Light Inn or Moonrise Towers are the natural next steps. Not this time though, instead it's off to the Gauntlet of Shar. Here I made the invisible maze my bitch, then invisibly snuck up to Balthazar's bedroom. This was the one scenario I'd already had previous experience for. Just knock the door open, press the end turn button, followed by the end turn button, followed by, you guessed it, the end turn button, until eventually I could step over Gale's fresh corpse to open the door from out of combat. After Balthazar chose death, Withers revived our boy Gale. Together we posed for a cool action shot on the elevator. Gale fell through said elevator, and Withers revived him once more. That whole roller coaster got us into the Verge of Shadows, where the Night Song is released from her prison. Up until this point, there's really been nothing random about the run. You could easily replicate it on honor mode very easily. What the fuck is this script? But up next is Moonrise Towers. Invisibility gets you past whatever moronic hell Jaheira just let her harpers into, but once on the roof, it's all up to Aelin. Before attempting anything resembling strategy, I wanted to see how a standard do-nothing attempt on Tactician might go. As you can see, it doesn't go well. Lowering the difficulty to balanced tells the same story. But Explorer still doesn't make a difference. Turns out the developers really did expect for you to do something during combat. A wild concept. Worst of all, you can't enter the roof on a character to try and set up anything from out of combat, because it instantly locks you into a cutscene. What I needed was someone with immunity to cutscenes. That someone? Our friendly neighborhood Mage Hand. And the Arcane Trickster variant of Mage Hand has an infinite duration. I reloaded to an earlier save before freeing Night Song to place some potions on the roof in advance, and now mid-cutscene this blue hero can buff her with haste, invis, and Cloud Giant strength before the battle begins. However, that's not all this magical hand can do. It can execute a wonderful thing called kidnapping. Now, I want you to forget everything you thought you knew about kidnapping, because I'm about to teach you how to kidnap someone like a pro. By casting Throw on someone you have enough strength to lift, and then cancelling it within one frame of the cast, you'll be able to carry them for as long as you want. Through waypoints, walking, flying, pretty much anywhere you want to go, they'll be stuck to you like glue until you make that little ghostly image of your character appear. Flying around using this technique, I was able to reposition everyone from the rooftop to a lower level of the tower. For the last enemy, I used a hill giant strength elixir, leaving Ketheric alone to face off against the Night Song. Because I'm in dialogue here, no one gives a shit that this nonsense is going on. Hell, I even put my own character behind the safety of a barrel wall before letting the battle begin. Night Song vs Ketheric in an epic 1v1 showdown. For being the child of a god, Dame Aylin really sucks. She took 18 attempts to drop Ketheric below half health. This is where I learned that unless you're alive during the battle when he falls below 50%, Ketheric will not flee into the Mind Flayer colony. Which makes sense. I can't be upset that the guy doesn't want to run away from nothing, but like, who the hell knew about that mechanic? It seems the only way of defeating Ketheric without doing anything is to pray she lands 7 or 8 hits in a row before Ketheric can land 3. Thankfully that did happen after 24 more attempts. After that battle, we're rewarded with the Mind Flayer colony. Clicking the flesh rot door reveals the brain, causes the Absolute's army to march on Baldur's Gate, and lets us all know it's time for the real battle with Ketheric Thorm. Dame Aylin remains on our side, but after that last display, it should come as no surprise to any of you that the Night Song, even on Explorer difficulty, will never win this fight on her own. Phase 1 of the fight, she could potentially, in a 1,000,000 to 1 odds, luck her way through. But Merkel's Finger of Death ability is unavoidable. To survive against him, she would require both healing and invisibility. There is no way to defeat Ketheric without doing something. However, I discovered one weird trick that Ketheric probably loves. Remember that little pixie I freed earlier? She is our hero. By interacting with the Pixie Bell, she'll show up to offer you protection against the Shadow Curse. By choosing any of the insults in this dialogue, the Pixie will transform you into an animal. While polymorphed, the map is no longer red, and in that brief window of time, waypoint travel is permitted to escape the colony. Because we saw the Absolute army leaving in that previous cutscene, the path towards Baldur's Gate is now open. Without killing Ketheric or claiming his Netherstone, I have officially left the Shadow Curse lands. What should be a moment of celebration is immediately replaced by bigger problems. Long resting in this new camp triggers the Githyanki Camp Boogaloo, a mandatory encounter where you need to move from your comfy bed up to the conveniently placed escape portal within just a few turns or it's game over. And believe me, when I say mandatory, this isn't a Larian tried to make it mandatory situation like before. The devs did their homework on this one, because as soon as you wake up, the game wipes all your buffs and forces you into combat more aggressively than a North Korean dictator, even dead characters. To my knowledge, this is the only battle trigger in the entire game that's impossible to skip. I've found ways to get around the Nauteloid transponder or the Iron Throne battle triggers, but this one is impossible after patch 6. So Proxy, how are you going to reach the portal without moving during combat? Thanks for asking, theoretical viewer who likely isn't subscribed. It's Mage Hand. It's literally always Mage Hand. At this point, if I could send a Mage Hand into your house and click subscribe, I'd do that too. Before long resting, good guy Gale voluntarily jumped into a nearby chasm. Because Gale is dead during the cutscene, I can swap characters to him. From him, I can then switch to the real hero of this playthrough. Still buffed with the elixir of Hill Giant strength from earlier, I can kidnap my sleepy party members up to the portal's spawn point, splash them both with invisibility, and construct a wall for good measure. Being heavy sleepers pays off, as my party woke up in battle right as planned. The invisibility and wall proved completely worthless, but without moving, the portal is in range. In the astral plane, I snuck past the initial Gith battle, where it's now time to meet the man of my dreams, the real cockblock of the challenge, Mr. Emperor. For previous encounters, I had general ideas for how I might handle those situations, but for this one, I have no clue. On his own, the Emperor consistently gets his ass handed to him within 2 rounds of combat, and the dialogue pulls all characters into battle automatically no matter how far away they are. Theoretically, if the monks missed every hit while he landed all of his, this would be winnable on paper. I'd even tried save scumming the encounter, but in 3 hours of attempts on the easiest difficulty, he never downed a single Gith. The odds of him winning while I do nothing are about as likely as Larian is to make some DLC. The next 5 hours were spent trying all kinds of random crap to skip this encounter. Along the way, I discovered a bizarre exploit that let me travel back in time to Act 2, soft locking me there forever, causing dead people to respawn and messing with my head. The timeline of the story is already messed up enough as is with Ketheric still alive, so let's focus on the one I'm in and admit the truth. There is no way to skip or beat the Githyanki encounter on patch 7 without participating in combat. Nah, that's a lie. I found one. While trying to use the Pixie Bell to skip the combat trigger, I discovered that doesn't work, but it does temporarily place the artifact into your inventory while transformed. Normally, you do not have the artifact while you're inside the prism. I could now use that artifact to lock one character into a conversation with myself, which lets him avoid being put into combat. While that's happening, the Mage Hand moves up to trigger the Emperor's conversation for its owner. That way, they won't be teleported up to the battle location. Once again, our Mage Hand's immunity to boring dialogue racial bonus comes in handy. This is where the Iron Flask I'd picked up earlier comes into play. Summoning summoning a terrifying spectator who unfortunately decided to become a pacifist, following the rules of not hitting anything until the Emperor is done talking. Being out of options with no idea how to move forward, I shoved myself off a cliff to my death as one often does. While observing the spectator about to record it in a badass hidden UI camera shot to add it to the mile-long list of this video's failures, something happened. It appeared to do an attack before flying out of my vision range. That single action was enough to spike my dopamine levels higher than a Sunday morning sausage McGriddle. Not a sponsor, I just liked them. Still out of combat, Stan the man left his artifact cutscene, jumped up to revive the rogue, and we got ourselves a fresh mage hand. I'm not going to pretend to know why, but the spectator has the ability to engage in 1v1 battles with each of these Gith. Alone, this majestic murder-loving eyeball killed one, then another, and defeated them all, surviving with just 3 HP. As the last Gith fell, the Emperor dragged me into a cutscene, did his usual yapping on and on about a story that no longer makes any sense, recognized my incredible ability to do nothing, and open a portal back to reality, leaving the spectator to chill out here on a flying rock until the end of time. Surely that can't ever come back to bite me in the ass later. Upon entering the third act, Kethric's Netherstone is given to me by the Emperor, placed directly into my inventory. This is part of a failsafe mechanic to prevent someone from being soft-locked if they've managed to start Act 3 without bringing the Netherstone. Thanks to this little-known mechanic, not killing Kethric is a non-issue. All that's left to do now is acquire both Orin and Gortash's stones, with our first target being one handsome young man's. This requires a new technique, starting again by kidnapping one of my characters. But this time we're going to kill the kidnapper and pick up his corpse. Doing this causes the kidnappee to disappear from the world. Next, just stuff the corpse into a box and reverse pickpocket the body into this specific guard's inventory. Speaking with this guard reveals it was actually Orin in disguise. Shocked Pikachu face. With this revelation, she teleports out of the world forever-ish, and both my characters are mysteriously gone. Saving the game and reloading it from here will result in both characters being teleported to where she went. A special developer-only area meant to hold NPCs until they're needed for an encounter or a cutscene. All kinds of crazy characters hang out here. Pixie. It's not only for NPCs though, as Gortash's Netherstone can be found on the floor next to a dead Gortash. This is the real Netherstone needed to progress the game, and with it in hand, we can waypoint our way out of developer purgatory, Withers revive the dead, then head towards the city. Being a do-nothing pacifist has its perks, as the guard let us walk on in when the Steel Watchers scan reveal we've done nothing. Inside the keep, Gortash invites us to his inauguration after recognizing us as Kethric's killer. The story is falling apart because that never happened, and I saw Gortash's corpse already. Not wanting to see a dead man become king, I moved into the city, where it's as simple as visiting a bank teller and talking to a grease monkey in the sewers to reach level 6. Not gonna bother with any quests, because screw finding stuff or helping people, I've got things to not do. I wanted level 6 for the Conjuration Wizard's Benign Transposition ability. Since none of you have ever cast that spell before, what it does is let you swap places with an ally once per long rest. However, it doesn't specify that that ally needs to be alive. A little further into the sewers, Yenna runs up to greet the party, but by using the artifact, you can dodge that conversation temporarily like I did for the Emperors earlier. In that downtime, kill your gnome or halfling buddy. Trust me, you'll see why in a second. Pick them up and reverse pickpocket the body into this child's inventory. Position your wizard ready with Benign Transposition at maximum range, then start a conversation with Yenna. Spam 1 while talking to Yenna until she says silly.
Silly.
Count 6 seconds in your head, or out loud, I don't really care. Then cast Benign Transposition on the dead ally's portrait. If timed properly, the spell will swap positions with the corpse in Yenna's inventory, who at that exact moment was teleporting with Yenna into the lower city's dev-only area. This dev-only area has lots of cool people from my previous videos. Remember Honk? Or this guy? What about the Pixie? Anyways, more important than any of those failsafes is Orin's Netherstone. With it, I can waypoint back to the sewers, where it's just a matter of invisibly sneaking by the murder trials, past the rats, over the nasty sea, and into the morphic pool. As usual, the Emperor saved my ass from the brain by pulling me into the astral plane, where nothing usual was about to occur. Remember that spectator from earlier? It's still here. The Emperor made his way to his usual position, spotted the spectator, decided it's time to throw hands, got hit one time, blamed me saying it's entirely my fault, then permanently left, prompting Raphael to teleport in moments later as he normally does. I figured this is fine, no problem, surely Raphael can save me from the spectator. Until he too got hit one time, bled, triggering an instant game over. I should have been annoyed at all that, but all I could do was laugh at the absurdity and enjoy my new puzzle. My first idea was that fog may block the vision to prevent combat, but apparently both the Emperor and Raphael hate fog more than being hit by a spectator, as both took it as an immediate sign of betrayal. Thankfully, my next idea of casting invisibility on the Emperor and clicking on Orpheus worked long enough for the exit portal to open to the upper city. In here, Withers talks shit asking how it's possible we have no allies at all.
Didst thou not make allies?
Sorry bro, that was kind of the point of the video. For one last time, we invisibly snuck through the high hall, and I bet you all think Gale's gonna blow himself up now, right? But no, I just brought him along to fake you all out. I know everyone really wants to see another ridiculous strategy that I struggled for hours to figure out so I could take on the brain with this rule set. Let's climb on up and see what a normal attempt would look like. The second you complete your brain ascension cutscene, the entire party is put into combat. Then movement and an action will be needed from the Emperor to channel the Netherstones and open up the portal. Once inside, you have to defeat the brain, and you have no one to help you at all. Let's run that back and get started on the real attempt now. This time I picked up an additional hireling at Withers, ordered it to jump to his death, then summoned a mage hand before climbing up the brain. Once again I used the dead companion to switch out of the cutscene onto my mage hand, but this time no kidnapping shenanigans are necessary. Instead I just repeatedly shoved myself until far away that the cutscene can't complete. Because it broke early, the brain didn't have time to initiate the combat trigger. All the enemies are up here stuck waiting until that conversation ends, which it never will. I revived the dead so that my party could carefully make its way up the side ramp, being sure not to touch any part of the brain's flesh. The Emperor, out of combat, channeled the Netherstones into the crown, and nothing happens. The devs made it so that the portal will only open while the Emperor is in combat. However, he's already got to use the action while out of combat, so I'm okay with that happening. Next, I used the Pixie Belt and the artifact to lock myself into 2 conversations and splash both characters with invisibility. The hireling summons a rat onto the fleshy part of the brain, summoning a tentacle creature, initiating combat for everyone not mid-dialogue, thus letting the Emperor open the portal. From here, Gale, the Emperor, and my hireling can no longer do anything but end their turns. The first out of combat guy can leave his chat, go invisible, and drop a rune powder barrel right next to an orb of negation. The final character now invisibly enters the portal, and out of combat drops a massive explosive payload on a platform that will not be destroyed by negation, but is within range of the rune powder blast plus brain. And now, we wait. Unfortunately, the screen doesn't really show very well what happened, as all of my characters inside died immediately, but what happened is the brain's own orb of negation triggered the rune powder barrel, which triggered all of the explosives, letting the brain off itself, thus completing all of Baldur's Gate 3 without ever having to do anything while in combat. Who would have thought that doing nothing would be so much more complicated than just doing things normally? If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like to help out the channel, and try checking out one of my other challenge videos like this one. I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel, and special thanks to my channel members for their additional support. Until next time, Proxy out.